good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, whatever part of the world you're currently listening to our video blog and soon to be podcast. I'm going to be doing a shorter version of this walk around here in Williamsburg, and just going to talk a little bit about this issue regarding Miss Nancy Mace's bill, in which she proposed that only U.S. born Americans should be allowed to run for public office, especially in the federal government. Okay, so if you guys are familiar with U.S. history, especially Virginia history, here in Williamsburg, Virginia, every single one of these houses used to be owned by, British subjects to the crown. This is actually one of the largest living museum in the country. And right above, or in front of me right there, is the governor's mansion when the British was in charge of this colony. So, going back to what Miss Mace was proposing, essentially she wants to limit government service to U.S. born citizens, okay, regardless of your allegiance. You can be a U.S. born citizen but not have allegiance to America, but she's okay with you having a public office role, which I simply don't understand. But she managed to go ahead and roll out her entitled bill. Basically, it's an entitlement that only gives those that are, U.S. born Americans the privileges and the duty to serve in government. This is the old governor's mansion, but there was actually another governor's mansion here before there was this one. The other governor's mansion that we're gonna go check out is actually used to be used for both the governor's mansion and for the courts back then, when the king have authorized many of their subjects to congregate and form a union. It wasn't against them, it was a union that was basically just so that they can, promote and preserve the agenda of the British Crown. It wasn't an independent union which it has the power and authority to make decisions for itself. It was basically created so that it could appease the colonies and make them feel like they're actually a part of the monarchy. And that was basically the purpose of this community, if you want to even call it that, until they realize that they're getting cheated and bamboozled by the crown, and they will never advance in their status. So they decided to go against the edict of the crown, which was total control and authority over the colonies. Okay, they didn't really care if their subjects were interested in equality. They weren't interested in knowing that their subjects are motivated to educate themselves and chart their destiny. They were just basically telling them what to do. Okay, folks. So, going back to Miss Nancy Mace's bill, essentially she wants to be operating similar to that of the monarchy. She wants to have people that are under her authority and basically dictate how that person or subject is to operate. And you have to be given permission by her, okay, on how to serve and participate in public discourse, because you're not going to be allowed to run for office. So you have to follow her quote unquote lead. So as I went and researched this lady's background, she graduated from a military institute. I don't know if she actually been to any theater where there was a war going on, but she graduated from an institute that promoted the military objectives of the country. She was not trained to be a lawyer, although she did work in a restaurant somewhere in her home state, and then decided to run for office after that. So is she really all that qualified to make a decision for the whole country? I don't think so. At least I'm not convinced that she has the subject matter expertise to do so. But she decided to basically alienate the population that have pledged allegiance to the country. Okay, and so that's just a very short-sighted and, to be honest, asinine bill that she's proposing. Because she's assuming that everyone that was born in the country will have allegiance or would look out for the best interests of our country, okay, and our citizens. That's just how she thought of it, without really fully appreciating that there are foreign-born citizens that have more loyalty and have served this country above and beyond and have sacrificed for this country more than any US-born citizen. I myself have served in the US Peace Corps, making $200 per month for 28 months. Okay, I gave up a pretty good career and job so I can serve. Okay. I don't think a whole lot of Americans would want to give up their jobs, make $200 a month, and live in a country that's not familiar to them. Okay, and on top of that, given that I came from a legal immigrant background, we have been living in economic hardship and poverty throughout the time that I was growing up. So I didn't really have any, form of, I don't know, I guess, overall concept of wealth. I basically just did what I had to do and, managed to meet my objectives. So that was me growing up, and then I decided to serve, making even less money, so that I can support our country's objective to win hearts and minds overseas, and I think we were successful. Okay, folks. So this lady, Nancy Mays, I heard her net worth prior to becoming who she is today has significantly increased. Okay, and she's now has more power and authority than she's ever had before. And now she wants more of it by limiting access for other people to serve. Okay. Since we're here in Williamsburg, there's quite a bit of animal sanctuaries here. So I'm gonna let you guys see some of these shapes. I don't know if you can hear these rams, but there's quite a bit of sheeps around here. So I will let you guys enjoy the view while we're here. They're actually out there watering them now, and they're gonna be giving them some food in a little bit. So I'll let you guys see it, and I hope you guys tell your family and friends to come and visit. So there they are.
Away saying thanks.
Anyway, so that's a pretty nice view of these rams that they keep here at the village. So anyway, what I was talking about is it's kind of funny sometimes when people just think about doing things without really fully thinking it through, and then they kind of backtrack and say, oh, that's not what I meant to do, or it's not what it's supposed to be, all that stuff, right? But in all reality, their motivation was to have complete authority and power over other people. Now, I believe that there should be a rule of law. I believe there should be accountability. Okay? And I think that's already been being enforced in our legal system. So if she truly wants to make a difference and, rid the government of corrupt and evil and self-serving agendas of some of these politicians, why don't she go after them directly? She shouldn't have to, cherry pick who gets to serve their country, because even though some of these citizens were born abroad, America is still their country. So they should have equal rights and privileges to serve their country. It looks like there's quite a bit of tourists today. Anyway, yeah, so all these houses have been preserved. They're in the original version, okay, of architecture when the British were here. And most of these houses have been used to, at least the architecture, were used to form other houses throughout the country. So they're old-fashioned. similar to these houses, most of the houses throughout the country. Okay, so the designs are somewhat, very unique and different, but every one of them were authentic houses that was built during the times that the British Europeans were here. So that's how it looks like back then. Um, this is Margaret Hunter's shop. English Miller Margaret Hunter made its cloak, hunted fans, and sold various clothing and accessories. 1770 it was built. Okay. This one was built in 1765. Opened in 1765 by London jeweler and silversmith James Craig. The golden ball was universally recognized as the sign of a jeweler, I guess. Um, it's pretty interesting architecture, and this one is fully made out of brick. And this one was built in 1765. Show its name. And it says here, built in 1765. The left side of the building housed an apothecary shop. Its name reflects the myth that a unicorn's horn held magical healing powers. So it's called the unicorn's horn. And that's what it looks like. So anyway, very unique architecture. Most of them are well preserved. So what you might notice is that these buildings have a very unique feature, and some of them are still being utilized, the architecture in itself, in various states. They copied most of them. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Even the chimneys and garden sections of the houses. Anyway, what I was saying is that I also wanted to reflect on why this Macy's bill came about. Because it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was basically created to deter and keep those that are corrupt and nefarious and evil from gaining access to power, which is very commendable. We shouldn't let people that are corrupt in our government. How do you know if they're going to be corrupt anyway? Not until they take office, right? So this one is John Crump's house. Built about 1719, this building housed a number of taverns over the century. It was purchased in 1789 by jailer John Crump, who continued the tradition. So anyway, there were corrupt individuals in the government that basically decided to abuse their power, which is fairly common, especially in government. But instead of having them removed or voted out, they were protected, mainly because of entitlement. So today we're having all these problems because once a politician, special career politician, is put in office, it's almost impossible for them to be removed due to the fact that they're name recognition and funds that they manage to accumulate and continue to build up while they're still serving continues to grow and amass, and so they have more purchasing power on top of their actual authority. Okay, so that's the quagmire that the country's having to deal with. Having said that, it's not impossible to get them removed by voting them out among the members. Congress can vote a member out, or the senators can vote their members out, and even the president's office can nominate a politician to be removed, which is often hard to do, even if the president wants a politician to be removed because of the overall power of the parties. Mansion that I was telling you guys about that kind of been repurposed and been also utilized to serve as their courthouse and lodging for their kings and queens at that point. So that was pretty much the overall setup for this building. It was mainly for special privileges and functions that are for the royals only. I've been inside this building. There's two portraits of the prince, I believe he was, that ended up becoming the governor of this colony with his wife, and they were fairly young back then. I think I don't think they were in their 20s yet, but they were housed there, and eventually, after a few years, they moved to the new mansion that I showed to you earlier, the one that they've just basically refurbished. It's got a bigger garden set up, and it's much bigger than this one. But this is the oldest building, one of the oldest in this colony. So, yeah, anyway, let's see where else could we go. I'm having a great time just, walking and nonchalantly advancing here, because everything here is like within walking distance, and they have a really nice sidewalk system, so you can just take your time and walk as much as you want. So yeah, going back to Miss Macy's bill, that till to this day I don't know what what possessed her to even go ahead and propose a bill like that without consulting with the country. She should have a discussion with other government officials, decision makers, and say, okay, is this something that is even worth talking about, or is this something that will promote unity rather than separation within our country? America's always been a diverse country. Okay, it's even though everything started here in Williamsburg by the British, and even though predominantly were Europeans, not everybody that have lived in America were from Europe. The Native Americans, for example, have never been to Europe. Many of the Africans, Asians, South Americans have never been to Europe, and they all managed to, move to America. Matter of fact, I don't know if you guys realize this, but the British weren't the first people to come to America. There were the Italians, there were the Spaniards, and some French that came almost the same time, and as the British and the Dutch, the Germans. Yes, they were mostly from Europe because of the overall proximity to Europe, but there were already people here that were not European descent. Now, I'm glad that these Europeans, educated Europeans and, well-off Europeans came because they helped build this country and society, but just about everybody else that came here also helped build the capacity and the marketplace. It's just that, given that they're a majority, then it made it seem like they're the only one that was doing the heavy lifting and building this country. But in all reality, that's not the case. You just kind of have to look at history and make sure that you fully understand the overall issue that took place when the country was being developed. Okay, that's something that you guys need to really consider. Now, yes, there were a lot of European influence here, but those were distributed in parts of the country that were mainly established. Okay, these were countries that were already colonized and it's livable and people can stay in those places. So, yeah, it was in their interest to move to an already established colony. But the country is so huge, and even before the Europeans got here, the natives have already established their society and overall capacity. Granted, it wasn't anywhere close to what the Europeans were able to establish. But then again, the Europeans have more resources and capacity and education to support capacity building in this country because they had the resources from the crown. But in all reality, everybody that landed here did not just smooch off the country, everyone, till to this day. Okay, folks. All right, so got a very, very nice weather condition, and even though there are tourists, it's not as crowded as it typically is. So anyway, what I was saying is that now that we're close to celebrating America's 250th anniversary, which basically originated from this part of the country, America became America, because of Williamsburg, because of what many of the Virginians have done to separate the country from the powers of Europe, the principality of the monarchy, the tyranny, the oppression, the corruption, the dictatorship, everything that is vile and corrupt, they decided to disassociate themselves from. Okay, and that's why they created this country, because they wanted, equality for every Americans when the British was in charge. And therefore, a lot of what they were trying to promote was the religion that was basically abolished, or it was forbidden by the crown for them to congregate and worship the way that they wanted to worship. So the Quakers and the Puritans decided to leave, and once they left, they managed to recruit some people to help them with the capacity building of their local colony. They didn't have a lot of support from the British once they decided that they are going to start their own country and develop their militia. So that's the reality of US history that many of you probably are not aware of, depending what part of the world you're located. But also, you got to realize that history can be dictated based off who won and whose narrative is more compelling. That's just how history is predominantly the time is done. There was no social media. There was no, you know, posting on Facebook. There's no documentation for the public to share their own personal experience. So the historians were the ones that created the narrative and basically shared it with everybody, regardless if it's true or not. And so whoever won basically promoted, a narrative that made them look like they were the rock stars of the war. Now, throughout my engagement in overall research, and as much as I read about history and current events and foreign affairs, and given that I grew up here and have been exposed to the history of the country and learned about it, and went to a college that mainly promoted Western civilization history. So I kind of got some of the watered down version of history. But I'm glad I kept on learning and educating myself, because the more I realized that whoever talks about history in a way that it basically influences hearts and minds to win hearts and minds, then you're just going to basically buy into it unless you educate yourself and try to research and do the homework yourself. So, yeah, that's just the reality of storytelling, depending on what type of narrative you want to promote. But in all reality, folks, and to be honest, I'm glad that the Europeans came, because if they didn't, then most of the Native Americans probably wouldn't have been able to develop America the way that the British colonies managed to develop the country, just because of the resources that was available and overall education of the people that came here. Was it oppressive? Yes, definitely very oppressive. But throughout civilization, wherever part of the world you're located, there will always be those that will marginalize other people, and there will be those people that will push back. That's just the reality of civilization. Now, should we learn from it, or have we learned from it? It's hard to say, because it seems like we're back to square one where we started, especially with this new law that's being endorsed by Miss Nancy Mace. I've actually have posted my thoughts on it on her social media platform, because I believe she lost her credibility to lead because of that kind of very infuriating and ridiculous bill that she introduced. So that's my, thoughts on it. Because you would think she would want to unite the country and say, okay, together we're going to remove the corrupt politicians in our, you know, um, government, not cherry pick, those that have yet to become politicians or gain access to power or authority, because you don't know what they're going to be doing. They're just basically try to, provide a narrative that isn't really going to give you any form of guarantee how they're going to be operating. Politicians are out here to be voted and to win. They're not going to tell you the truth, unfortunately, until they gain access to that power. And to me, by her introducing that bill that is really very counterproductive, is a good indicator of her abuse of power. That's an indicator of her wanting to oppress those that were not born in America. That's just how it pretty much sounds like and looks like, and now it's going to be read like, because she has introduced it to the marketplace. And so the marketplace is going to basically talk about it, and it's going to balloon to a point that people will, agree with it or disagree with it, which is now happening. Okay, so that's the new governor's mansion, by the way. We were just there earlier today. But yeah, so she introduced something that she even, decided to back her opinion up with scripture. And to me, when somebody uses scripture to oppress other people, then that's a sure way, okay, that this person has a very evil, corrupt, and nefarious agenda. Okay, the way that scripture is supposed to be and intended to be used is to unite people, to give people, that feeling of togetherness and unity. Okay, folks, that's what scripture is for. It's not supposed to divide people, especially if they were to serve for the common good and common purpose. Peter Scott House and Shop Archaeological Project. So this looks like a house that was demolished, and now they're trying to bring it back to life. So they're gonna rebuild it. Okay, so yeah, that's my opinion on that particular subject, because like I was saying, it's a very counterproductive law that she's trying to pass. Instead of uniting our people, she wanted to basically have separation of access and privileges, as well as duty of a citizen to serve our public interests. She's mainly saying, and to me, trying to basically promote a dictator's agenda, in which she wants people to be isolated based off of where they were born. And regardless if your allegiance is to America or not. So that's a very, very dangerous, concept to promote. Okay, folks, because America's already been going through a lot of separation and, issue having to unite our people. We've been struggling and we haven't been very, effective and efficient in uniting our public. And then here is a decision maker, a politician, who unfortunately came from the Republican Party. As many of you guys are aware, I am running as a Republican. So it's very unfortunate that it came from her and from our party. But I think it's important for other Republicans to talk about it and say this isn't something that we support or agree to moving forward, because it doesn't make any sense why she decided to isolate people based off of where they were born. They didn't have any control over, the country where they were born in. They have control over their decisions, their actions, their policy that they're promoting. And like I said, Miss Mays has lost her credibility to lead because she has control over her policy. She has plenty of control over what she wants to do with that concept that she's trying to promote. She didn't seem to think about it. At least I'm not convinced that she did consult with other, decision makers within the party. They just basically said, okay, let's go ahead and promote a very disjointed, counterproductive bill that is not going to unite the population. They're just going to raise a lot of animosity, and people are going to be furious about it, especially those that have been serving and have pledged allegiance to the country. So why would she even, promote that kind of garbage? But she decided to move forward with it, and now there's ramification for what she's done, given that that is a very sensitive subject that would basically infuriate many Americans. So this part of America was colonized by foreigners. They basically created a society that we now know today. A mixed group of people living together. Granted that there's been a lot of civil issues, mainly because of politicians and politics. But it's up to the next generation of politicians to provide a solution and basically create a platform in which everybody gets to participate. Okay, and until that happens, we're just going to be basically going over the same old garbage that we've been going through. That's just how it is, folks. And to be really honest, I think people are already tired and sick of it. So that's just my thought on how things are. But oh, by the way, this is the square section of Williamsburg. This is where all the shopping centers are and restaurants and I guess theater is also here. So it's more crowded here because people are just sitting around and enjoying themselves. It's very similar to European neighborhoods where they have the seats outside and children riding their bikes running around. But this is fairly close to what it looks like in Europe. Very European you know, feel to it. So this is Kimball Theater.
Boy. Oh, was it a wedding or what's going on?
So, yeah. But anyway, it's getting a little crowded and noisy here. I apologize if you guys can't hear everything that I'm saying. But I'm gonna do a U-turn and walk over to across the street. I was thinking going to the university. Oh, well, actually, maybe I should go. One factoid that I want to share with you guys. So, Alex Christoforou of the Duran, and he's one of these political commentators, geopolitics mostly, graduated from William and Mary. Like, I just thought I'd give him a quick shout out. So this is where he graduated from when he was in college. And now he's got hundreds of thousands of followers on his YouTube channel. And he does, you know, vlogging all over the world. So he travels and do his vlogs and talk about, you know, all sorts of things, mainly, you know, geopolitics. So like I said, I'm not sure what he studied when he was here. He is pretty proficient in the way that he's, you know, evaluating current events in foreign affairs. Most of his opinions I tend to agree with, even though he knows more in terms of where to get information and the reliability of those information, if they're actually credible sources of information. So he's really good in, you know, doing all sorts of public searches for foreign affairs and policy information. Yeah, this is where he graduated from. I know he is of Greek background. I don't know if he's half Greek, half American. I know a part of his life had been in the US. He grew up here. And then I guess eventually he decided to move back to Greece. So, and now he's mostly based in Greece, but he still travels around the world and, you know, promote certain political opinions. So this is William and Mary, 2026 Renton building. Actually, we've been inside. There's all sorts of stories there. And matter of fact, at the base of this building used to be, or it still is, I guess, those cemeteries. People are buried there under the building. And I've heard certain stories of haunting in there. So I've never personally felt anything when I was there, but I heard that that's there. And it's been, you know, one of those story that have been shared throughout the world, basically. I mean, this building's fairly well known, given that it's one of the oldest buildings in the country. Yeah, so anyway, what I was going to just say is Alex is a well-known vlogger on foreign affairs and current events. And so I'm at his alma mater doing my video blog. Eventually I'm gonna head back around and return to my base, my temporary base, and have dinner. So I try to walk as much as I can just because I want to be able to exercise. But yeah, so anyway, as far as the political opinion of many of our country's citizens pertaining to Mrs. Mace or Miss Mace proposal is proving to be a bellwether for the country, in which many of our politicians are becoming more exposed in terms of their personality, character, and motivation. Okay, folks. So, as I mentioned to you guys, I'm all for improving our system, our government, and I'm all for removing corrupt politicians. What I am against is, you know, isolating people based off of things that they have no control over, like where you were born. Okay, I know a lot of stupid idiot imbeciles out there that were born in this country. Many corrupt, many very, very nasty, ugly people that were born in this country. Okay, so why would I want them to be a part of the pool of decision makers that makes the law for our country? So check that out. They dug that field there to create somewhat a similar ambience as other well-known Ivy League universities, or maybe this is where they got that idea from, I'm not sure, but it's similar to that of other Ivy League universities like Harvard and Yale. So we're gonna turn around and complete a vlog when we get back to my car, but I just want you guys to see what William and Mary Wren building looks like today in the year 2026. Okay, so let's see, when was this building chartered? It was chartered in 1693, before there was an America. So very similar architecture of that in Britain. As y'all know, King William and Princess Mary is named after the university. And I've played my violin up there actually. It's got a really very nice acoustic sound. And I'm gonna try to do that again now that it's getting warmer outside. But I played my violin up in there, and the acoustic was just the best I've ever heard in a long time. I mean, I'm not a very good violinist to begin with, so I mean, if the acoustic can make me sound decent, then that tells you that the acoustic there is beyond, you know, ordinary. So what I was saying is that we need to keep on talking about this issue with Miss Mace, because not enough people have opined on it. At least I haven't heard anyone that is prominent or any influencers on social media talking about it. Maybe I've just missed, you know, certain pointers from other influencers that tend to talk about foreign affairs and geopolitics, but so far I haven't heard any reliable opinion or assessment regarding what Mace wanted to promote. Okay, folks. Yeah. So I want to be fair with Miss Mace, because, you know, for the longest time I've actually supported her. I've you know, I actually have been very um vocal regarding my support for Miss Mace. Okay, so King of the Pines. Okay, so I'm glad that you've been talking about it too. I'm gonna look you up and see if we're on the same page regarding this law, because I haven't heard any other influencers or vloggers that are currently talking about that bill. I know that it's still yet to be heard, but like I said, I don't think it will pass. So, but let me know what you think, and you know, feel free to share any other information with me if I missed anything. But I think, as far as what I understand, she was associating that bill with Ilhan Omar and all these foreign-born decision makers from blue states mostly. So if you're trying to expose politicians that are Democrats, I don't think that's a mystery anymore. I think most people understand that the Democrats, regardless where they're born, are going to counter or provide a position that is different from that of most of us conservatives and Republicans. So that's like a no-brainer there right here. Okay, folks. So, by the way, if you look down that way, the Wren building is directly facing the old governor's mansion. And this walk here was the original street that the British were using back then, when they were basically educating the population. So the neighborhoods that we just passed had people living in them, and their children would go to this building and to other, you know, historical buildings in this colony. Let me fix this real quick. So if you really want to know American history, this is the place to be. Now, granted, like I was saying earlier, there were people in America that weren't of European descent, and they didn't, you know, come from Britain, that have been here living. It's just that, unfortunately, you know, whoever wins get to tell the story. And given that most of them did not win, but they still reside in America, they don't get to tell their story. So somebody else get to tell their story. Okay? And most of the time, their story's not really fully represented, or if it was told, it's not completely shared in the same fashion that would emphasize their contribution to the country. It was just mainly shared just so that people know that they were around. Okay, so what happened here? Where was that building that I used to go to? Anyway, yeah, so that's just the reality of how history is told. It's always, you know, going to be promoted. Whatever it is, you know, it would look good will be promoted. I think this is the one. Yeah, I think this is the building that I was looking at the various furnitures at last time I was here. So anyway, folks, what else did I wanted to talk to you about? I just want to keep on, you know, I want to stick with this issue with Miss Mace's bill, because it's definitely very, I don't know, dangerous to create a concept that is going to influence our political system to the point that it could destabilize our society and overall unity as a marketplace in a country. So I think that's something that we need to kind of discuss, because if she manages to convince some of her colleagues, then it's going to basically snowball into other tyrannical and dictatorship agenda that is not in the best interest of the country. And like I was saying, it's very unfortunate that she decided to propose a bill that is definitely not in the best interest of anyone, not even those that have been born, raised in the country. You know, it's just one of those things, because they're going to be labeled as either racist or out of touch or just unpredictable and untrustworthy. So even though that they didn't want anything to do with it, they're going to be considered by those that weren't born in the country to be unfit to lead, and that's not the case. There are quite a bit of people that were born here that are extremely fit to serve. So again, what I was saying is Miss May should have carefully considered her narrative and her bill before moving forward with it, or even before going public with it. That's just my thoughts, right? She should have consulted with other people, even people that weren't born in the country, and see how they feel about it. Because to me, in my opinion, it's going to snowball to an issue of lack of checks and balance, where there is no accountability. So that's just the reality of that bill, and it's going to be a very problematic situation for our government. So I've talked to some of my friends that are also politicians, and they are kind of not wanting to reflect on it because they know how unproductive it is, and they don't want to be associated to that issue. And I can understand and appreciate why they don't want to be associated to that kind of bill, regardless if they support it or not, at least they're not publicly endorsing it. So yeah, and as I mentioned also previously, that I've already stated for Miss Mace to consider relieving herself from her position and not serve in public office, because I'm pretty sure that she has constituents in her home state that weren't born in the country that want to run for office, that are also conservative. Okay, another shout out to P. Cygnus. Is that how you pronounce your name? Well, I apologize if I butchered your name, but thank you so much for watching and joining us on our video blog today. Yeah, so Miss May should do the right thing and step down from her position, because she basically disqualified herself from public service. Okay. And I guess this is going to be an ongoing issue for her until she decides to leave office or redact or reverse her bill. So, yep, I think that's just the reality of things. But she's going to have to fix this major catastrophic political event that she's created to the point that she's most likely not going to be allowed to serve in public office again unless the Republican Party of her state continues to support her, which I don't know how they're going to want to do that, given that it's so divisive and lack of character for a decision maker, a politician from the Republican Party to say those things. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm enjoying my walk, so I hope you guys don't mind me doing my video blog today a bit longer than normal. I just kind of want to exercise and stretch my legs because it's a really nice day to be walking, and the weather and the ambience and this boardwalk is just perfect. So, but yeah, anyway, we will continue to also talk about some of these architectures, because some of them were actually brought in by other Europeans. They were, also French that brought in some architectures into Williamsburg. A certain point, I don't know exactly the location. I heard that there's some buildings here that are French, architectures. Eventually, we hope to find it. But anyway, so as a politician, I want to kind of give you guys my 10 cents regarding this issue with Miss Mace. Why hasn't anyone, not even the White House or anyone within Congress or Senate, tried to review this issue? I think it's important that there is a clear message that the White House and Congress and Senate share with the public. Okay, because the Trump administration is not that popular among Democrats, and I guess so to the point that they're not that popular among minorities, which is a shame, but that's just the reality of things. So I think it's in the best interest of the White House and the Republican Party to reflect on what's being endorsed, because many people need to see leadership. Okay, it doesn't matter if they're into politics or not. They just need to hear and understand where we are at as a society and as a country. Okay, I think that's very important. I'm not endorsing politics even. I don't think, politics is going to be that, unifier within our society, but I think it is going to be one of those,
As long as it's something that's around,
signal
that's fine. They got
that
people come on
will
in here and if you can push them and stuff like that.
basically influence hearts and minds. And I think that's very important that the White House or the Republican Party provide an opinion soon. They shouldn't be waiting this long. I mean, it's been a few days and we still have not heard from the Republican Party or the White House regarding this bill. And it's somewhat concerning given that it's a bill that is, in many obvious reasons, is going to divide our country. That's just my opinion. I think it's a very problematic bill. So, and it's equally problematic when our leadership is not vocal in their position regarding this very infuriating law. Okay, folks. So, yeah, that's my thoughts as a politician. No one should have to second guess or try to, figure out where we are as a country regarding certain policy. That it's not only, socially problematic, but there could arise some civil rights issues regarding it. And that's just, it's going to be an issue that we don't want to escalate. Yeah. Anyhow, I hope that Miss Mays have learned her lesson and also would do the right thing by stepping down from public office. And as I said, I mentioned this earlier, I supported her throughout her career. I wanted her to lead with distinction and with honor. Okay, but based off of what she has recently done and promoted, I don't think her political career could be salvaged by anything now with that kind of very counterproductive agenda. So with that said, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share our channel with your family and friends. I've been having a wonderful time walking and talking, so I might just keep on vlogging for a few more minutes. It's been an hour, but I'm not really all that worried now because it's a very beautiful day and I just love walking and enjoy the exercise and talking to you guys about geopolitics and geoeconomics worldwide. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. But yeah, so again, I think she should consider stepping down because I'm not a big fan of disjointed policies, especially those policies that could infuriate many of our people, because a lot of that will basically create animosity among our population, and it's going to basically wedge that divide even deeper among our people. Look at all these fancy dolls, porcelain dolls, right outside. And the drums. Very, very typical of the culture back then. So anyway, folks, going back to my own campaign myself and how I managed to connect with the public, I actually tell the public most of the time that I'm not a career politician, so I don't operate like a politician. And people should not expect for me to talk about stuff that most career politicians talk about, because I really don't care about most of the crap that they're talking about anyway. They're trying to win votes without really wanting to improve society and the state of our political environment. Or basically have created something, a monster that they cannot even tame anymore. And it's just very unfortunate because so many people are being affected by it. Okay, folks. So yeah. Anyway, let's review Miss Mace's background. Just try to understand what precipitated her actions. Why did she decided to support an agenda that I'm pretty sure she knew that could backfire big time and could destabilize our political environment. I'm pretty sure she knew about it, and yet she still went ahead and promoted it. So, like I was saying previously, her background is from a military schooling. It's very, I guess, offensive in nature and strategic in many ways, but the rules of engagement in the military has to be examined. And to me, I don't believe she's examined the rules of engagement to the point that it made sense for her or for anyone to pursue. So she is one of the most vocal politicians, conservative politicians we have in the country, and she's well known, not just in her home state. Okay, so that should have given her more of a pause to examine her position regarding that bill. Okay, because she's like a well-known national figure in the country, so that's just the reality of things. All right, folks. But she basically disqualified herself from public office by promoting that kind of narrative. So anyway, like I was saying, she doesn't have a whole lot of subject matter expertise on policy. Most of her thoughts that she's introduced is based off of her opinion and vendettas. So she's not quite connected with the public in terms of background and their able to identify with her as a person. She came from an affluent family background where she managed to ascend into office and power based off of her upbringing. Now, I'm not saying that she didn't work hard for it. I'm sure she did, but she started from the front of the starting line compared to those that started from the very back of the starting line. And basically, she got 10 miles head start in life. And most people that have never had to deal with that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's unfair advantage, will not see it that way. But in life, that's just the reality of things. You either get access to opportunities or you don't. And some are basically kept away from getting access to opportunities. Okay. And why is that the case? Well, because there are people that are stuck on stupid. And so when they're stuck on stupid that way, then they will not allow a debate that is logical and productive. They're just going to basically promote their agenda, and that's it. End of story. My way or the highway. And those are what you call tyrants and dictators and imbeciles when they can engage in a public discourse to the point that they can win hearts and minds. Okay, folks. So that's the reality of today's America. And it's not just an overnight thing. It didn't just happen yesterday or last night. It's been an ongoing issue because we're basically recycling the same old garbage over and over again because of the glass ceiling in politics that we've created. There are people that gets access to power in our society because institutions have given them access to power. Okay, that's just the reality of things. The institution that have created the checks and balance and the gatekeepers have made sure that we're stuck on stupid. Okay. And then they whine and bicker and fuss and throw a fit for creating something that they've been preserving. So does that tell you much about our society? If that shows any form of credibility in terms of our political environment? No. I mean, let me just answer that question now. It's a definite no, and uncontested no, because the parties get to pick and choose who it is that they put in office. It's not the people that get to pick and choose, unfortunately. So, with that said, folks, why is this relevant today? It's relevant today because everybody is on social media nowadays. Okay, they're basically providing their opinions, and no one can, oppose them, because once they post their opinion, basically, it becomes public. So that's just the difference today. But the gatekeepers are the one that has more influence and has more authority to dictate who it is